Okay, you guys are probably wondering what happened to Saturday's episode of the Soapbox. I just didn't shoot it or put it up because I was on the road for 14 hours. So today I want to talk. So today's episode, which is supposed to be yesterday's, I'm going to talk about stories in video games, like how people kept saying that they want more gameplay than story. I think it all depends on the kind of games. Like the Japanese games, like Metal Gear, like Kojima Productions, Capcom. Those companies really focused on story. Back during the PlayStation One, they focused on story. Those are story-driven games. If you limit the cutscenes to a certain minute, then you're taking out all the development in that story. So I think developers should just focus on story. I think story is so much better to focus on than how much gameplay you get. Because technically, yeah, you need. I mean, like they should focus on that too, but I think the story aspect should be the one aspect that should keep you going throughout the whole game. If the story is not interesting, but the gameplay is good, I think it's just not a very appealing game. Because that's the one thing I like about Metal Gear Solid 4 is that it drove me to beat the game because I wanted to know how it ended, how it wrapped the whole series. Then if you were to look at other games like Prince of Persia, that game didn't really drive me because the story wasn't really good in my opinion. I was just I just didn't really beat it. I mean, yeah, some of these other games like Call of Duty, Fear, the story aren't isn't really there. They've just been focused on gameplay, so the story gets backseat half the time, and you don't really beat the game for the story. You beat the game because the game's fun, which is good because a game is supposed to be fun. But I think now we need more stories in games than the typical storylines are just kind of there and you know how it ends. Because if it drives you to beat the game, then that's where it all counts. Not, oh, the gameplay will be the reason why you beat the game. It should be because of the story. The gameplay should not really should not matter that much unless it's completely horrible. Like for instance, Resident Evil 5, that story is pretty good. It's pretty interesting. It keeps you from not finishing it. It keeps you finishing it and wanting to know what happens to Wesker, what happens to Chris, and all these other characters. Then going through the game, but the gameplay itself is just kind of hitting there here and there. Like it does not play like it should. It should have run and gun mechanics, yet it doesn't. It cries for those Western modern controls, but it doesn't have it. I mean, it has all these little mechanics that made Resident Evil 4 so great, but now we're in 2009. These little uh, gameplay mechanics will not look the same if you played it in 2009. It's just stop and shoot does not work in any other games. It does not work. You want running and gunning. Just look at Gears of War. And that's another prime example of not an interesting story, but you beat the game because the gameplay is fantastic. The story really didn't really get the big boom as it did. Gears of War 2 did get the boom. They were it's just kind of ridiculous how like that they did fix it for Gears of War 2, but the story was just kind of oh that happened. Yep, this is gonna happen. Yep, like it's just too much predictable. Like you knew what was gonna happen exactly. We just need more games that have more interesting stories than interesting gameplay. Gameplay should be a little should have some focus. I mean, Resident Evil 5 sold so well because of the story alone. Like they just liked the other for the gameplay because they liked the story. They liked the fact that it ended the Chris arc. They just liked the story. They wanted to see what happened. That kind of devotion to a certain game, I like that kind of devotion because you get the whole you know feeling of reading a book. You read a book, you like the book because you like the story, but let's say that it's not written good, but the story sounds interesting, but it's not written really well, it has some grammar issues here and there, but you still read the book because you were just caught up into the story. That's what we kind of need for games, is that the story grabs you, and the gameplay has some little hiccups here and there, but you still beat the game because you wanted to see how the story ends and how it ties the loose ends, or creates other loose ends for the sequel to finish. But pretty much that's all I want games to have now are just good stories, not stories that are just kind of thrown in there from like other games. I'm tired of hearing these emotional stories about, oh, my loved one is missing. I gotta save her before she dies, or I gotta save my missing person so she doesn't die, or whatever. How do you just do that and have like a Metal Gear feel to it, where you just go on a mission, you don't know what exactly. All you know is that this guy's the bad guy. You have to stop and make sure he has no abilities to shoot a nuclear weapon, and like that kind of stuff. We need that in a video game. We need that kind of sense of you don't know everything. You just know these little bare essentials of what you need to do. And then as you go through, you start seeing these other questions come up. You see all these little answers, these little things that start making you wonder, why is this happening? Who's doing this? Who's doing that? Instead of just having, I'm looking for someone throughout the whole story. It gets really annoying to hear the same thing of, oh, this person must be doing this. I gotta find this person. Next scene, gotta find this person still. Next scene, have you seen this person? This gets to the point where I just want to stop playing because I know what happens to that person because it's just a typical plot twist. So that's pretty much all I want in games is story. I don't think that's too hard to ask. Just a good story will do.